Hello, and welcome to the Fathers United channel. The purpose is to give fathers a neutral place to share, gather information, and feel appreciated. My name is Nate, and this is Cautionary Tales. Here is where we discuss high-profile conflicts that fathers have gone through. We'll break down the who, what, where, when, and how of the situation in hopes that in the discussion we find some nugget of truth that can prepare us to avoid the same pitfalls. In this episode, we're going to be discussing the complicated divorce of Paul McCartney. Sir James Paul McCartney was born in Liverpool, England in 1942. He is a singer, songwriter, and musician who gained fame from playing bass guitar for the Beatles. He also shared songwriting and lead vocals with John Lennon. His songwriting partnership with John Lennon is the most successful in modern history. He would eventually become the de facto leader by providing creative impetus for most of their music and film projects. Primarily a bassist, he was also skilled with other instruments like keyboards, guitars, and drums. When the Beatles eventually broke up, he performed solo for a time and then formed the band Wings. His second band was also successful, and after he went on to have a solo career from 1980 until the recording of this video. Paul McCartney has a record 32 songs that have been on the Billboard Hot 100, 2 inductions into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Academy Award winning Emmys, 18 Grammys, was appointed a member of the Order of the British Empire, and knighted. He stands as one of the wealthiest musicians in the world with an estimated worth of $800 million. Obviously, he is attractive to the opposite sex. Paul McCartney was married 3 times and engaged twice to Dot Roan and actress Jane Asher. Miss Roan, Asher, Eastman, and Mills all ended for various reasons, but we won't be speaking on those. Today, we will be discussing Mr. McCartney's marriage and subsequent divorce to Heather Mills. A divorce that still stands as one of the most expensive Hollywood divorces of all time. The two reportedly met in 1999 via Piers Morgan at an awards ceremony in London. Despite there being some 26 years age difference between them, the two seemed to hit it off well. Paul hadn't been happy since the passing of his first wife a year before, but around Heather he seemed more lively and happy. He's described as having been in a sorry condition, wandering aimlessly around his estate, talking constantly about Linda. TV writer Carla Lane said, quote, "Paul was just haggard. I mean, he sat there like an old man." Rumors of Heather Mills' past surfaced, but despite potential shortcomings, she was able to pull Mr. McCartney out of his grief. At the time, she was engaged to Chris Tyrrell, a bad sign in my opinion, but called it off for Paul McCartney. The two would travel together and spend the holiday with his family in Liverpool. Supposedly a relative said, quote, "The more you met her, the more you knew she was a nutter." Paul didn't notice, nor did he seem to mind the rumors such as she'd been a party girl who hung around rich Arabs. Regardless, Sir McCartney lavished Miss Mills with gifts. It seemed that while everyone around recognized the situation for what it was, Paul McCartney was blind, or rather, didn't care. Paul would propose in 2001 with a sapphire and diamond ring. The two would wed in 2002, where Paul's son James and his adoptive daughter Heather were absent. Both had been vocal about their dislike of Heather. The same year, in an interview with Barbara Walters, Miss Mills made it clear that she didn't like her charity work being overshadowed. She said, quote, "I am married to the most famous person in the world, and that is very fortunate for me. This is a man who has had his own way his entire life. When you become famous at 19, it is sometimes hard to listen to other people's opinions." The general tone of the interview made it seem like Heather found her husband annoying. This, of course, led to an argument between them where Heather told Paul that Walters had asked about some personal and unflattering stories from her early life. This led to her saying what she did. Seems like to get the pressure off herself, she turned the attention onto Paul McCartney. Heather Mills also accused Paul of, quote, grabbing her by the neck and pushed her over a coffee table. He then went outside, and in his drunken state, he fell down a hill, cutting his arm. However, the experience on Barbara Walters and the fight wasn't enough to stop her from doing more talk shows, where she would face deep probing into her past. Multiple allegations about Heather came out. A childhood friend took her to court, suing about the details in her memoir, and won compensation. A previous employer said she stole $25,000 in jewelry from them, and 2 women came forward confirming that Heather Mills was enjoying the high life in London with rich Arabs when she claimed to be a model in Paris. The couple fought, and Paul allegedly pushed her, but nothing else occurred. In 2003, Miss Mills reported that she asked Sir Paul if he had been smoking marijuana. Paul became angry, yelled, and choked her. Heather then became pregnant despite the issues, and another fight broke out that resulted in broken appliances and a bottle of ketchup being thrown at the 61-year-old man. Their baby was born later that year. The disagreements continued. Paul wanted a family life in the UK, while Heather wanted to become a media personality in the US. Heather claimed Paul didn't want her to breastfeed their child because, quote, they were his breasts. The two seemed to fight about everything. She didn't want to cook. She wanted a private office nearby to her. Paul complained she always wanted more. Heather then asked Sir McCartney's accountant for $500,000 so she could clear a mortgage. His accountant tapped that as fraudulent and denied the request because there was no mortgage on the flat. Their fights only got worse in April of 2006. They had a fight so bad it allegedly ended with Sir McCartney pouring a bottle of red wine over Heather. According to the divorce papers, McCartney grabbed a wine glass, broke the bowl from the stem, then lunged at her with the broken stem of the wine glass. He cut her just below the elbow, making it bleed profusely. He then proceeded to manhandle her, yelling for her to apologize. Paul, of course, denies these damning allegations. As if divine intervention had occurred, a German sex magazine from 1988 came out featuring Heather Mills both nude and semi-nude, simulating sex with a nude male. During the divorce, Paul chose to remain silent, while Heather went on TV saying things like, quote, "I've had worse press than a pedophile or a murderer, and I've done nothing but charity for 20 years. She even compared herself to Princess Diana. Her popularity plummeted, and she decided to represent herself in the divorce, asking for over $130 million. But the judge denied, and in the end, Paul ended up having to dish out $48.6 million to his ex-wife. Heather was reportedly furious and dumped a jug of water over Paul's lawyer's head. The judge's final ruling was, quote, "I am driven to the conclusion that much of her evidence, both written and oral, was not just inconsistent and inaccurate, but also less than candid." He ordered that neither of them should disclose any further details to the media. 2 years later, Miss Mills would fall into social obscurity. There's a lot of he say, she say involved in this. Did Paul truly abuse her? Was Heather really a party girl? Was she taken advantage of by a lonely old man, or was he taken advantage of by a younger, financially dependent woman? We will never know, and that's not what we're here for. Paul could have potentially avoided this by using discernment, better judgment, and listening to those around him. Although I understand, love does make you blind a lot of the times. Regardless, let this be a cautionary tale to us all. Marriage can be a costly endeavor if one makes mistakes. Thanks for watching this episode of Cautionary Tales. Please like and subscribe for more father-related content, and comment below any situations you'd like me to share as cautionary tales to our fellow brothers out there. On the next episode, I'll be sharing the story of Nick Cannon and his multiple baby mamas.